On April 14, 2018, Marianne had the privilege of taking a tour with Jeff Mudgett, the great-great-grandson of H. Holmes, to the location where the murder castle once stood in Chicago. The following is the video that she recorded while on that tour.
Welcome to another episode of Our Haunted Travels with your hosts, Sean and Marianne Blunt.
Knows more about the layout and where the castle actually was than anyone on earth. And I've been doing this for 20 years now, and the murder castle has changed location at least 5 times during that, okay? Heather has researched it methodically and gone through all the records. She's made the model that you're going to get to see when we get back, and she knows where it's at. And you've got an incredible opportunity to ask her any questions you may have about the castle and its dimensions and where it was laid out. So feel free. So go ahead, Heather.
Technically, it's kind of strange because being physically here on the site made me realize one thing. The latest version of where it's at in the records is now also wrong. What tells me that is the edge of that truss where it comes down and hits the pole to the ground is even with this street, not the wide part, but look right where that tree is in the back. You see where the smaller part of the street is? That was originally Wallace Street, went all the way through. It was made out of a very large cobblestone. I wouldn't say cobblestone, very large stone. As a matter of fact, if you could get a Google view at the top of this truck right here, the original flooring that was down on these streets is still up there. And they're very large. They're about 3 foot, maybe 3 foot, 4 foot, maybe wide each. And this whole boulevard was paved with it. And it was still horse and cart when they were doing it. And up there, this was actually, they had a crane that could load your trains right here with all of the goods, which meant that when he was building the castle, he got all the goods delivered right on site.
It wasn't a mistake that he picked this location.
No, it was
wasn't.
perfect. And matter of fact, this is what you're standing on right now. This is a tunnel that's underneath your feet right now. This brick wall that you see right here, this little brick wall right here, is actually the existing edge of the bottom part of the castle. And it's still underneath of us. Those guys would just let us in. We could go check this out. Now,
where you're standing right now, the History Channel was refused.
Yes.
We couldn't, for production, we couldn't come on this site because the post office was upset about the television show I did a couple years earlier where a couple of statements were made and they didn't like them.
no.
And so when History came and asked to film and then go into the basement, they said no. That upset them. But someone there did. Because, you know, Tom, you realize I went down into the basement with Kim years ago. And the first time I went down, it was barricaded, the doors. And we got the security guard and the custodian. His boss had gone to lunch. She had said no for 4 hours. She had gone to lunch, and when she did, he said, come on. So we moved the barricade, and we told him he was going to be in a film. It was a little dishonest, but... So we moved the barricade, we went down into the stairs, and then the basement, it was out of a Stephen King movie. It was cobbled, it was spider webs. No one had been down there. And when I was going down the stairs, I didn't believe in the supernatural. I didn't believe in paranormal. I wasn't very religious. And in an hour when I came back up, I believed in all 3. I didn't have a ghost come to me. I didn't have any of those apparitions. But I felt like a pushing on my head. And the pushing on my head wanted me to murder my best friend. My best friend, I played college basketball with him. And it was telling me, you have to murder this man. I don't want him down here. And I tell you, I'll never forget that moment. I tried to write about it in the book. So when we came back years later with History Channel on Haunted History, the Murder Castle, we had about 50 people in film crews that the post office let us go back down. And there was none of the feeling, none of the energy left. They had cleaned it up, they had painted the basement, it was a much different place. But nothing like what had happened the first time. And I don't know anything about paranormal or the supernatural, but I went to the neurologist and asked him about it. And he said I'd had a seizure. I don't know. The original brick tunnels.
The tunnels come off of this building this direction. The tunnels come off of this building, coming off in this direction, and somewhere either, and I'm not exactly sure where the cardinal directions are. I do believe that this might be either on that side over there, or this might be over on the Low side. That Low Street is the next street over. Now, once you go in there, you want to see what that thing still looks like? It's still there. Now, what they found in there with your filming is they found some of the original brimstone from the original building in there. God, I'd love to have that. But they also found a couple of other things. I can't remember what you guys said, that you found pipes and lead pipes and other things that belonged to the original building, which tells me that these guys did not clean it out. All that junk, and possibly even bodies and things other than that, you're standing on it.
Well, and what we're trying to do now, I've hired a law firm in Washington, D.C. We're going to start working on getting permission to actually excavate the site. It's a long, drawn-out process. I've got to get permission from the city, I've got to get permission from the state of Illinois, and then I've got to get permission from the federal government. The plan that I've had over the years was I had to prove to them that I could do it responsibly without destroying any historic property and without interfering with the post office, which was why we exhumed, for a number of reasons, why we exhumed the grave, so that we could prove to the world that we would do that historically and put it back the way we found it. So now the lawyers are using that evidence when they present that to the district court judge in Washington, D.C., who will decide whether we have permission to excavate. Once we have permission to excavate, then I have to get DePaul University. University of Pennsylvania has already expressed an interest. The archaeologists and anthropologists helped me there. And then we've got to get financial backing. The excavation costs us about $2 million. This is going to cost probably $20 million. So we've got to find some backing to do it, some historical, wealthy people that'll help us with it, or another television network. So that's the process. So we're probably looking at least 2 years from now before we put a shovel in the ground. But I think I'm not so interested in, Heather and I have discussed many times, we believe that when they raised the murder castle, when the federal government bought it, tore it down, and filled the ground, they were doing it in a way to hide the evidence which was here, because they knew they had a responsibility to investigate murders that were committed here. They couldn't just walk away from them. And there's no statute of limitations on those murders. And that's one of the reasons we're going to use legally to argue that we should be allowed to dig here. The victims are owed that. And I don't know how many people were murdered here. There's authors now who say there were 3 or 4. There's authors that say there were 200. I don't know. But Heather and I have determined that there was mechanics in the basement to eliminate the remains after a murder, and that there should be DNA here below, and it should be detectable with scientific methodology, which we used in the exhumation. So we're going to do our best to do that right. But I also believe, and this is the first time I've actually told a group of people this, I have some correspondence, family letters. I believe Holmes buried things here that weren't discovered. And I've already decided with my family, if we found something like that, we would dedicate it to the state of Illinois anyway. But we think there's things here that are very historic, that are going to excite the world. Because He was a collector in stock portfolios when he was living here. And we've never discovered them. We've never determined where they were. We've never determined his assets, where the money went. We know that, and I'm going to talk about this tonight at the event. We know that his first wife, Clara, I have her journal that you can see in the event tonight if you'd like to see it. She visited him in prison, okay? She took instructions from him, although she said she hated him.
Is that your great-great-grandmother?
My real great-great-grandmother, yeah. Despite him having many wives, this was the legal one.
The one that survived.
Yeah. My line. Yes. After the alleged execution, she visited Chicago 3 times, which we think was to see Holmes's banks. She had his power of attorney. She then went on to live a very wealthy life. We think from those correspondence and her visits, there's something here the world hasn't seen yet. And to tell you the truth, that I'm excited about. But for me, it's the voyage, it's the journey, it's the discovery and the exploration to find something historic that's just laying here on this ground you're standing on now, which affects me. I can feel it already, what's here. Not so much to aggrandize, as Dave did a great job, Holmes, the horrible man. I just think the victims are owed that. And lastly, in the corner of the concrete here, when President Obama was in office, I wrote him a letter saying that my father and I would like to put a bronze monument here, not to Holmes, but to the victims. And President Obama wrote me back personally and said he had talked about it, and that his administrators were not, because of the area it was, they weren't happy about putting that monument there. They wanted me to plant like a garden in the corner. Well, I'm going to take the letter back to DC, and I'm going to show the new administration, or maybe the post office, that his intent, that would have been an idea worth considering, and see if we can do it after we excavate, put it back together, and then put a nice monument to the victims. And my father's agreed to pay for that. So we're going to try to do as best we can, but to see that if there were people murdered here and forgotten by our government, which they're not allowed to do, that was a crime. I want to see them right. I've gone to book signings and had people come up to me and say, Jeff, I'd like to buy your book, but I want you to know our family believes your great-great-grandfather killed our great-great-grandmother. And we'd like you to help us identify what happened. So that's kind of what I'd like to do now. And you being here helps me with that a lot. So, ask some questions of Heather. I mean, you've got a great opportunity here. She's such a knowledge on the place. Can you block it off for us?
All right, well, you know what? If y'all look at this parking lot here, do you see that light line that's going right there towards the truck? I do believe that might be the edge of the building, because it's kind of in line with what's going on. It could be right here as well. That's the thing. I'm trying to figure out where in history was the edge of Wallace Street. As soon as we can figure out where the edge of Wallace Street was, this guy was right on the damn corner of it. Which means...
Are you on the line of the Trenco angle right there?
I'm right on it right now.
I think you're right there.
I'm right on it right now. And I'm right on the edge of the street over there as well. Which tells me that it might be that tree right there.
Well, these trees were planted long after.
Well, that tree right there may have been the front door.
Yeah.
You said you found,
It's there.
10 pages, right? From
Yeah.
the journal. Is that like around this
Oh,
area?
okay.
To be exact?
I have to always get my references. When you walk in the entrance to the post office, you move through the letter delivery system. You go back into the storage area, and then the stairs would be stairs would be back over here. You come up, and then the tunnels would be over.
They're right here.
Right
between the two windows, I'd say.
a little back behind where Tony's standing there, maybe 10 feet behind.
And they come this direction, and also possibly behind. Because one thing I know about this, 40 based on the same idealism of the star, the Northern Star, which means that the tunnels would have been built to the star points. That means there was at least 5. The cardinal star points would have been the very rear, which had a gas tank and a ladder up to the surface of the street, which was one exit. 2 off the back side, probably right where that van is sitting, and exactly on the other side, same place. The other tunnel would be right here, and one on the other side going the other way. But it's possible that they didn't come off the sides, they went in front of the building, going across the street, which used to be another pharmacy. So I think that he was getting his drugs to escape the ladies right over there.
He never had to use.
Gas. Had gas in every room.
Yeah, and then the law enforcement didn't catch on to the castle till long after he was arrested in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Well, one of the things I found out through some of the other stories that I had read in the Victorian era is that even though he had electricity, and he had electricity put in here because of the elevators and things that ran, but he also had gas lamps in every one of the rooms, in which case, oh, we don't need those anymore. Take the lamps off. Oh, now you have a big vapor gas hole in the room. People go, what's that? Oh, we used to have gas. No problem. Problem is they'd go get in their room, get ready to do their thing, and he'd go, turn on the gas. So almost all of the second floor, almost every room in the second floor had gas to gas you out, fuel you, and drop you down to the basement. Well, the second floor was the hotel rental area, so you'd rent a room there. And the funny thing is that people would go in there and not come out. People would go, hey, where did that girl go that was in here? Oh, she found a guy and moved off with him. And so they just disappeared, and he'd write them off. Oh, well, she took off. I don't know.
You know, before we go back on the bus, it's starting to get a little cold. I want you all to understand, when I practiced criminal law in California, one of the major obstacles we had was determining premeditation and intent, all right? For me, this piece of land you're standing on right now is probably the greatest example, now greatest is the wrong word, most horrible example of premeditation. The man realized the World's Fair was coming. There was going to be 20 million people come to town. He realized the trains were here at Junction Grove. He knew people would need to spend the night, and he prepared for their coming with a factory of death. And I think that's probably, I don't like to argue about how many people were murdered, how many rooms the building had, all that. I like to concentrate on why was he so evil? What a man that had gone to medical school, had got his degree, there's no debate his intelligence. He could have been anything he wanted to be at that time. Decided to do this. And it's still a mystery to me and my family.
This was a body processing machine. It was meant to kill, to process,
Getting
and
cold.
to export the pieces and parts for more product. He liked to burn the bodies, if not, burn the flesh off the bodies with lime and reattach all the bones together and sell the bones back to the universities. But what he did is that the bones he did burn up into powder, he mixed those back into ash and created more mortar and concrete to build more.
We're getting cold.
If you like this video and like to see more in the future, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and give us a like below. Also, if you have any comments or suggestions for future videos, please leave them in the comment section. Thanks for watching this episode of Our Haunted Travels.